Now let's get to our first interview today. It's with Juan Vera. He's the Chief Development Officer of Marker Therapeutics.
We're here with Dr. Juan Vera today. Juan, thanks for being with us.
Sure, no problem. Happy to be here.
Now, Marker Therapeutics is an immuno-oncology company with various clinical trials. For our viewers, can you explain immune-oncology and T-cell-based immune therapies and their potential?
Sure. Immuno-oncology basically relies on the ability of the patient-own immune system to recognize cancer cells. The way that this therapy works is basically by extracting the patient-own T cells, which in the laboratory they're provided with anti-tumor properties, expanded and infused back to the patient. And at the moment, this type of therapy has perhaps captured the expectation and imagination of patients, investors, and healthcare professionals, and perhaps it will result in transformative therapy for many types of cancers. At the moment, this type of therapeutic modality has been explored extensively by academic institutions and the private sector, resulting recently in the approval of the first adopted T-cell therapy drug for the treatment of B-cell malignancies using particularly chimeric T-cell receptors. This recent approval of CARs for the treatment of B-cell tumors have accelerated the interest of academic centers and private sectors to develop these type of therapies in both early and later stage clinical trials.
How do T-cell therapies address major challenges faced by CAR and TCR approaches, and what does the competitive landscape look like in cell therapy?
At the moment, when you think about immuno-oncology, or in particular about adopted T-cell therapy, there is actually a broad gamma of many therapeutic alternatives. You have, in one hand, strategies which rely on genetic engineering, which basically override the immune response, allowing the T cells to recognize a very specific target within the cancer cells. These type of strategies have shown promising clinical outcomes. However, one of the potential limitations, or one of the biggest limitations of these strategies, is that it's a very narrow recognition of the cancer cells. And in this way, when you modify a cell, whether with a chimeric T cell molecule or with an alpha-beta TCR, the T cells are able to recognize their target cells only with a very, very narrow component of the tumor cells. Now, the reason this is a limitation is because perhaps one of the mechanisms of defense of the cancer cells is to express a very diverse makeup of antigens in order to evade mechanisms of attack. In this way, when you recognize a small subset of those cancer cells, these cancer cells can easily readapt and adjust a different composition, allowing the escape of immunopressure. One of the biggest differences of our strategy is that we rely on the use of native T cell receptors that different than CARs and alpha-beta TCRs that recognize one epitope of one antigen. Our therapy is able to recognize multiples of epitopes of multiple antigens simultaneously, and in that way addresses one of the biggest limitations of current strategies out there. And we believe that this multi-targeted T-cell approach is perhaps one of the reasons we'll be able to see sustained clinical responses in many of these patients.
Dr. Vera, discuss the merger between Tapimmune and Marker Therapeutics and its importance in operating as a combined immuno-oncology company.
This is something that we are very excited about. It has a lot of benefit when you think about the biology of potentially combining a vaccine platform with adopted T-cell therapy platform. Also from the business perspective and operational perspective, the ability to combine a well-established clinical and regulatory team from Tapimmune will allow us at Marker to accelerate the development of these novel T-cell therapy strategies that we have identified and characterized here at Baylor College of Medicine.
What would you say is the essential value proposition for investors, or why should investors take an interest in Marker Therapeutics today?
In my opinion, the company at the moment is highly undervalued. And in part is because many people haven't actually heard about our story. When you actually look at the clinical data, we have perhaps one of the largest cohorts of clinical data of a single type of product that actually have a very broad utility in many types of clinical indications. And like no other company, what we actually have is a very robust platform that will allow us to generate a sequence of iterations of new compositions very rapidly and extend this therapy to a broad array of indications, including blood-derived malignancies as well as solid tumors. So I actually think that the biggest value proposition is to be able to participate in a company that is really at the upstream and will basically be able to deliver in a short period of time a product that will result in an approved product in the market, providing a benefit to patients that currently have an unmet medical need, and at the same time will have a very broad portfolio that will be able to accelerate in our research and development pipeline. So I actually think that the prospects of the company are based on a very solid scientific ground, and we're very excited to now be working in this direction.
In a recent press release, Marker Therapeutics reported clinical updates with its multi-T cell therapies. Can you provide details on these lead clinical programs and what major developments might investors expect over the next 6 to 12 months?
Basically using this particular multi-target T cell approach in patients with AML, patients with multiple myeloma, and lymphoma. Basically in this cohort, we are able to provide updated cohort of clinical data showing an extended number of patients that have been treated, showing that this therapy is not only safe, but also result in a sustained anti-tumor activity. And what I have to say to the investors is that although it has not been well advertised, we also have a solid tumor program, which we will be providing some news in the near future.
Dr. Vera, what's the main takeaway for investors, or why should they own your stock today?
Major reason I would say investors should own the stock is this is perhaps some company that at the moment is undervalued. With our next aggressive clinical developmental plan and the strong scientific data that the company has been funded, we definitely have a pathway towards a registration trial. The investors should get excited as the way that we are, because I'm a strong believer that we will result in a successful completion of these clinical trials that will be able to actually transform the way that cancer patients are treated in the future. So not only a good investment, I actually think it's a good thing for cancer patients worldwide.
Dr. Vera, thank you for being with us today.
Sure, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Now, to get more information about Marker Therapeutics, visit mrkrinfo.com. You'll see research reports, fact sheets, presentations, and the latest videos. It's all free, and you can even subscribe to email alerts to stay on top of the latest news. You can also call 1-800-RedChip to speak to a specialist if you have any questions.